Chapter 181. Blessing complete. Skill card. Swordsmanship increases swordsmanship level. Just an ordinary skill card? And Ling was taken aback. It seemed the richness of the reward had nothing to do with the opponent's strength, but rather their identity. She didn't know if Nze's actions were directed by the family or were his personal doings. If the entire family was like him, and Ling would be in big trouble. Tion could use the news agency to spread false information online, so others could certainly find out who was behind it. Unexpectedly, the most underestimated force in the inn turned out to be her own family. By evening, no one from the inn family or the enforcers appeared at school anymore. It was getting late, and Ling had to go home. Arousing unnecessary suspicion would still be a problem for her. Nze said before that he didn't attack me because he feared Lin's strength. This means Lin is even stronger than him, possibly even stronger than everyone in this generation. Ling found the situation becoming increasingly complex. Lin was none other than her brother. She had previously thought that she could easily deal with these enforcers one by one. Now it seemed things were far from simple. Ling's current level was at the White Mammoth tier, already nearing its peak. Yet, even with this strength, she felt immense pressure dealing with the situation. This was just the tip of the iceberg of what she understood about this island. Back home, her sister-in-law was the same as always. After dinner, Ling shut herself in her room. Because she had to act at night, she needed to rest more during this time to ensure she had enough energy in the evening. Soon, Ling drifted off to sleep. At night, she didn't know what time it was, but she heard noises outside. It must be Lin returning, whispering something to a woman. Nze disappeared. He was probably eliminated by an intruder. Has the family found the killer? Not yet. Keep an eye on Lingling these few days. Try not to let her go out. It's dangerous outside. Okay. Since she was asleep, Ling didn't listen carefully to their conversation, only vaguely hearing these bits. She didn't know how much time passed, but the entire city was plunged into darkness. Her phone on the bedside table buzzed, waking her from her sleep. Ling knew it was time to act. She had to hurry and raise her level. To be safe, she decided not to have any direct contact with these enforcers or the Yin family until she reached the War Chariot tier. At worst, she would just stay on the island for a few more days. Anyway, there was no time limit for this mission. Ling didn't believe this city didn't have enough mobs for her to advance to the War Chariot tier. In the blink of an eye, her figure disappeared from the room. These past few days, her blessings had been oscillating among 3 types: stroke of luck, indomitable will, and double the fun. On this island that required absolute strength, what Ling needed most were the latter 2 blessings. She once again rotated the pendant around her neck, and the golden cube on it spun rapidly. The golden figure pattern was indomitable will. But the prompt that popped up next made Ling instantly ecstatic. Congratulations! Blessing complete. The bonus will be permanently converted into a passive skill. Blessing points. 1 point, ability enhancement, body enhancement, basic skill enhancement. At that moment, the golden figure pattern on the pendant disappeared, replaced by a single, like the number 1 on a die. Ling felt that this time, she hadn't just enhanced her physical abilities in all aspects, but also her special ability had been comprehensively strengthened. In short, her mana pool was larger, mana consumption was lower, and the power was greater. She opened her personal panel to check. Her swordsmanship level had reached LV7. The most crucial thing was that this was a permanent bonus. She no longer needed to rely on the pendant for a temporary power boost. No wonder these past few days' enhancements were all indomitable will. It turns out the blessing was about to be completed. A smile appeared on Ling's lips. This gave her more confidence in facing the upcoming crisis. As for the enhancement of her special ability, it was reflected in her weapon. A fiery red line had appeared on the originally pristine white blade. This meant she could now create an attribute sword, a weapon completely imbued with the fire element. Just like in her fight with Nze in the classroom, this sword would allow her to harness the power of fire. Although her main body couldn't become elemental like other ability users with elemental powers, it greatly enhanced her attack power. Since this blessing was complete, it meant she should be able to get another blessing today. With that thought, Ling rotated the pendant around her neck again, and it actually moved. Obtained blessing pendant bonus, double the fun. All obtained material rewards are doubled. Remaining time, 22 hours, 46 minutes, 22 seconds. It works. It was the blessing Ling had been looking forward to. If this blessing continued for the next few days, she was very confident she could raise her special ability level to War Chariot tier. She didn't believe she couldn't clear this dungeon even at the War Chariot tier. Thus, 3 days flew by. Ling played the role of a student during the day and roamed the city at night, slaying monsters. Everything went as she had guessed. The blessing had been fixed on, double the fun. Her level had also reached the Black Mammoth tier, truly reaching the peak of this tier. Because of Nze's death, Lin hadn't been home for the past few days. After being scolded by him on the first day, Ling hadn't seen her brother again until now. Because she had been killing monsters on a large scale, severely disrupting the city's balance, the enforcers had started patrolling various places in groups at night, trying to eliminate Ling, the intruder. She hadn't drawn the enforcers to the school, but her nighttime activities had forced these guys to appear. For the first time, Ling felt she had been stupid. What were enforcers? They were obviously maintaining the order of this island, this city. If she had known things were so simple, she wouldn't have gone to such great lengths. It was now the 4th night. Ling stood on top of a tall building, looking at the 3 people walking below. Each of them had a line of small words floating above their heads. Enforcer 008, Enforcer 009, Enforcer 010, Chapter 182, Ling's call. This was the first time in 4 days that Ling had encountered enforcers other than 011 and 012. So, these survivors haven't managed to kill a single enforcer? Perfect, their rewards will be mine. Ling sneered, leaping down from the rooftop of the building. The wind howled, but her gaze was sharp and filled with killing intent. Her target, the 3 enforcers below. The 3 enforcers were still chatting and laughing. Their faces relaxed. So far, no intruder had been able to withstand the combined attack of 3 enforcers. Tonight, let's see if that intruder dares to come out. Suddenly, 009 among them noticed something and looked up sharply, seeing a figure rapidly descending towards them. Watch out! 009 shouted. He and 008 instantly retreated, but 010 wasn't so lucky. The sword light falling from the sky pierced him directly. With a flash of the blade, 010's body was instantly sliced in two, completely lifeless. A graceful young woman landed steadily before them, a gleaming long sword in her hand, emitting a powerful aura of death. Killing the 3 of you should allow me to advance, right? 008, observant, noticed the strand of white hair on her forehead. You're from the Ant family. Seeing her identity exposed, Ling simply took off her hat, letting her beautiful, smooth white hair cascade down her shoulders. I'll hold her off. You go to the Ant family. 008 shouted at 009. He knew the terror of the Ant family. Even intruders were no match for these lower-ranked enforcers. 009 nodded quickly, realizing the gravity of the situation. Their previous confidence was replaced by the thought of how to escape. You're not going anywhere. Ling snorted. Several flying swords instantly appeared, completely surrounding them. 009 hesitated for a moment, then decisively turned back to fight alongside 008. He understood that their only chance of escape was amidst the chaos. The 2 rushed forward simultaneously, a red circular slash appearing in midair, emitting a scorching light that dispelled the surrounding darkness. A moment later, the flames dissipated and silence returned. Only 2 half-bodies knelt on the ground with a thud. A careful observer would have noticed that all the walls around the street had huge slash marks, forming a straight line, filled with cracks where it passed. Ling held 3 cards in her hand and vanished from the spot. Still a bit short? She stood atop a tall building, and the ability level displayed on the light screen was still Black Mammoth tier. But she wasn't discouraged. It was just a matter of wasting a couple more days. Special skill card. Rock. Description. After use, professional abilities will have inherent earth attribute damage, which can be transformed according to the ability. Special skill card. Curse. Description. Attacks inflict a curse effect on enemies. Instant kill on enemies below own level. Weakens enemies of the same level. Ineffective on higher level enemies. Special skill card. Sever. Description. Attacks have a 10% chance of severing anything. 3 skill cards, each a significant enhancement to Ling's strength, especially the last one. Combined with the Stroke of Luck, Blessing, Wouldn't it have almost a 100% chance of triggering? Killing these enforcers really does provide the biggest boost. And Ling couldn't imagine how terrifying her strength would become after successfully eliminating all the enforcers. They usually lurked in the city, but could keenly sense changes within it. This meant they had some kind of sensory or detection method for the entire survival island. Tonight, Ling had eliminated 3 enforcers in one go. It was no longer suitable for her to continue acting. Otherwise, she might face a siege from other enforcers. So, to be safe, Ling chose to be cautious. Tonight's activities were over, and she could only look for opportunities later. Her weapon materialized in her hand. Besides the fiery red line, there was now an earthy yellow line on the blade. Ling didn't pay attention to the change in the sword. Stepping onto her flying sword, she quickly disappeared into the night. Since Nzei's death, there seemed to have been some unpredictable changes in the family's situation. Lin was busy with work every day and hadn't been home for the past few days. It was unclear if this was related to family matters. But since that time, no other members of the family had come to the school or troubled Ling the next day. She went to school as usual with her backpack. Everything seemed unchanged, but Ling keenly sensed a strange atmosphere. There were many more students nonchalantly wandering around the school, observing their surroundings as if monitoring something. Additionally, there were more security guards at the school entrance and teachers in the teaching buildings than usual. It was obvious these people were there to monitor the school. It was just unclear if they were from the family or the enforcers. But undoubtedly, they had locked onto the fact that there was an intruder in the school and probably thought it was the one causing chaos in Dabao City. If they were from the family, they would likely guess it was Ling, or if not her, she would at least know something. Clearly, this school surveillance was organized by the enforcers. But it didn't matter to Ling. As long as she acted like an ordinary person, it would be difficult for them to discover her. In 2 more days, she could successfully advance to the war chariot tier, and then she wouldn't be afraid of any enforcers. During break time, as Ling was about to leave the classroom, the homeroom teacher walked in. Usually, this meant there was something to announce. Everyone, please be quiet. The school will be conducting a physical examination during lunch break. This is a city requirement. Everyone must participate. Please be prepared. Ling, come with me. The homeroom teacher left the classroom in a hurry after speaking, and the students grumbled about the wasted lunch break. Ignoring the others' gazes, Ling left the classroom with a hint of doubt and headed towards the teacher's office. She had even prepared to fight if discovered. Unexpectedly, when she arrived at the office, it was just Lin calling her. Chapter 183, Physical Examination Breakthrough. The homeroom teacher handed her phone to Ling and tactfully stepped aside. Ling took the phone and called Lin back. Hello, brother. Tomorrow is Grandma's death anniversary. There's a family gathering. Don't be late. A cold male voice came from the other end of the line, and before Ling could reply, he had already hung up. She returned the phone to the homeroom teacher, explained the situation, and the teacher naturally agreed to her request for leave. Although the siblings were born to a mistress, they had inherited the family genes, so their father, and even their grandfather, had to acknowledge their identities. Of course, they had lost certain privileges within the family. And for these large families, these days were considered very important, and a family gathering was often held. In reality, it was just a few brothers bragging to each other at the dinner table, flaunting their achievements to the old man. What they wanted was nothing more than the family property. In these people's eyes, there was only money. Family affection was all nonsense. And Ling returned to the classroom. Although there were still a few minutes before class started, she had no desire to go out. Both the school's physical examination and the family gathering were big troubles for her. This physical examination was definitely not a coincidence. The other party must have special means to identify intruders. Therefore, she absolutely could not participate in the physical examination. But refusing the examination would inevitably arouse strong suspicion. What to do? As Ling was pondering, the bell rang for the last class of the morning, which meant the physical examination was about to begin. When the class ended, Ling stood up silently and left the classroom. She decided to take a gamble. Of course, there might be better ways, but there was no faster method than this. She didn't go to the cafeteria to eat. Instead, she took advantage of the time when people were gathered and walked towards the sports field. Usually, all school activities were held there because the sports field was large enough to accommodate all the students. At the moment, several ambulances were parked near the podium, and some desks had been set up below. Several people in white coats were gathered together, chatting. At first glance, there was nothing above their heads. They were all ordinary people, but Ling still decided to deal with them. When they saw Ling, they were a little stunned because her features were too distinctive. "Student, the physical examination starts in the afternoon," one of the doctors explained to her. "My surname is In," she said calmly. The people around her were instantly stunned, momentarily at a loss. They were all low-level personnel and didn't know how to react in this situation. "Examine her first," a man in one of the ambulances leaned out and said to the doctors, his gaze sizing up Ling the moment she saw the man. The corners of her lips curled up. As expected, this was all their plan to screen out intruders. Above the man's head, there was a line of small words. "Enforcer 004. Student." The doctor began to speak, but the white-haired girl before him had already disappeared. Boom! A sword light struck, tearing the ground apart and instantly splitting the ambulance in two. Then, several sword lights pierced directly into the driver's cabin. With a bang, 004 leaped high into the air. His body was covered in sword wounds, blood dripping. He was clearly badly injured. He looked in horror at the white-haired woman on the ground. With a casual swing of her hand, her circular slash had effortlessly killed all the surrounding doctors. Bang! Bang! Two ambulances exploded, and two figures emerged from them. 005 and 006. What about 007? Dead? This useless trash. Let's attack together. The three instantly transformed into monsters and charged at Ling. But they were already injured from her sneak attack, so how could they be a match for her now? I didn't expect there to be four. I was searching far and wide when the solution was right in front of me. Ling waved her sword, and several flying swords appeared behind her, instantly stabbing towards the opponents like a storm. Sword lights raged, slaughtering everything around them. Faced with such a large-scale, indiscriminate attack, the three could only choose to resist head-on. A towering ancient tree rose from the ground, and countless vines seemed to come alive, constantly extending forward. 006 was trying to trap her with this, but he had clearly underestimated the damage of her sword light, as the vines were easily severed. A burning sword light pierced through, directly penetrating the ancient tree and heading straight for 006 behind it. "Watch out!" 005 shouted, wanting to rescue him, but in an instant, several sword lights forced him back. He could only watch helplessly as 006 was pierced by the sword light and then completely incinerated. Ling had been standing still the entire time. The flying sword lights formed an absolute domain around her, making it impossible for the enforcers to get close. With a flick of her finger, two cards flew into her hand, and she decisively chose to use them. Special Enhancement Card. Plants. Description. After use, you gain the ability to mobilize the life force of plants. Special Skill Card. Howling Wind. Description. After use, you can summon the power of gale force winds. Suddenly, Ling sensed 004 appearing behind her. He was the strongest of them and, of course, the most severely injured. 004 put all his strength into it. The head of the monster he had transformed into swelled up violently. Boom! An explosion rang out, and his head shattered, turning into countless spiky limbs. These things transformed into slimy insects in the air, flying towards Ling. Boom! A flame wrapped in a gale instantly erupted, completely incinerating the insects in a moment. When the flames dissipated, Ling saw 004 lying on the ground, no longer moving. "He's dead just like that?" she exclaimed in surprise. At that moment, she felt her body undergoing a change, a strange yet incredibly comfortable sensation surging through her entire being. A smile appeared on Ling's lips. She knew she had finally broken through. With this, she no longer had anything to worry about regarding tomorrow's family gathering. A card slowly emerged from 004's corpse, and 005, seeing all his teammates dead, decisively tried to escape, but it was too late. A sword stabbed directly into the ground in front of him, and 005 froze, not daring to move carelessly. Ling immediately picked up the card, grabbed 005, and vaulted over the school wall, leaving the sports field. Since she had already taken a leave of absence, it wouldn't be good if the commotion here attracted others' attention. Chapter 184. The Ark's Attack. In a small grove outside the school, and Ling stood indifferently, looking at 005 before her. Tell me, what do you know about the family and the enforcers? 005's face showed no fear, and he calmly revealed some facts. 12 enforcers were responsible for maintaining order in the entire city. They were both enforcers and law enforcers. To them, the arrival of intruders was like an invasion from another world. These intruders possessed various abilities, some incredibly powerful. They eliminated these outsiders not only to maintain order, but also to prevent their own positions from being usurped. After all, becoming an enforcer meant reaching the pinnacle, possessing supreme power. Of course, there was another reason. They were not content with the status quo and wanted to become stronger. By chance, they discovered that by consuming the bodies of intruders, they could gain the other party's abilities. This discovery drove them into a frenzy. Conversely, their positions could also be replaced. As long as ordinary monsters consumed enough intruders and became powerful enough, they could, in turn, hunt the enforcers. By consuming the bodies of enforcers, monsters could take their place. Similarly, they had this characteristic in front of survivors. This was why Ling obtained those strange cards after killing them. Regarding the family, 005 only knew that many within the family were more powerful than the enforcers, but for some unknown reason, they had no interest in becoming enforcers. Otherwise, all the enforcers would surely gather in the family. This was the only place enforcers dared not set foot in and could not control. Hearing that Ling still planned to go to the family, 005 sneered, I advise you to cherish your current identity and keep the fact that you're an intruder hidden. That's none of your concern. Ling casually unleashed a sword aura, instantly killing him. Then she picked up the 2 cards in her hand and examined them. Special Enhancement Card, Explosion, Description. Attacks can cause explosions, with power depending on the ability level. Special Skill Card, Swordsmanship Enhancement, Description. Increases skill level. There's another skill card? Ling was surprised. She opened her personal information and glanced at it. Her skill level had indeed increased, currently reaching LV9, Intermediate Swordsmanship. Overall, the gamble had paid off. Reaching the War Chariot tier wasn't just about being able to unleash sword auras. She even felt that the abilities of this tier couldn't be described as superpowers anymore. They were more like cultivation. Ling heard a commotion from inside the school, seemingly from the discovery of the bodies. The next second, her figure disappeared. The increase in strength gave her the confidence to face the family. If this island had a ruler, they must be hidden there. Otherwise, there was no way to explain what 005 had just said. I don't believe I can't deal with you even at the War Chariot tier. Meanwhile, on Construction Island, Suyu and the others had returned one after another. Their strength had all significantly improved, reaching the Mammoth tier. Li Xinyue thought she was the last to return, but she couldn't find Ling anywhere. She looked at Suyu. Where's Ling? Is she out? She hasn't returned yet. Suyu wasn't worried. This wasn't the first time. She seriously suspected that the survival island Ling was experiencing wasn't on the same level as theirs. Then why is her backpack? I don't know why, but she left her backpack behind. And her gun is on it too, Suyu sighed. Although she knew Ling would be fine, she couldn't help but feel a little worried. But I remember she seemed to be wearing those clothes before entering the island. Why are the clothes also here? Li Xinyue's face showed a strange expression. Maybe she entered the island naked? Although Suyu didn't want to admit it, the facts seemed to suggest that. Fortunately, Ling had advanced to the Mammoth tier and had a weapon before this. Otherwise, how could she fight while naked? Her island is really strange. I hope everything goes smoothly. Woo! The cries of sea beasts came from outside the island. Qin Xiao immediately walked into the house. Someone's here, and it seems they're not friendly. The two immediately stood up and looked towards the sea. Several ships appeared in the distance, sailing towards their island. I'll try to negotiate with them first and determine their intentions. Li Xinyue stepped forward. She had strong life-saving skills and was indeed the most suitable candidate. Everyone nodded. She went to the seashore and jumped down, transforming into a clear stream of water, merging with the sea, and rapidly moving towards the ships. But before Li Xinyue could get close to the ships, just as the distance shortened, she saw the word ARC written on their sails. She knew the nature of this organization. Although she didn't know how they had found them, they were definitely hostile. Just as Li Xinyue was about to return, she suddenly saw a familiar face standing at the bow of one of the ships, guiding the others. It's him. It was a patient she had rescued before. She didn't expect him to be from a hostile organization, and his ability was likely related to tracking or surveillance. She didn't reveal herself and decisively returned to Construction Island, warning everyone to prepare for battle. There was only one possible explanation for how this survivor found their island. He possessed a related ability. The man's ability was similar to being able to see cause and effect or origins, suitable for reconnaissance and support, but he had no combat power. Through contact with Li Xinyue, he saw that the ship wasn't a survival ground but was on an island. From the electric shock gun purchased from the Ark, he saw the architect was also on this island. And even through the corpse of the fat man who had been in charge of intelligence, he saw that Ling was also on this island. This instantly made the Ark organization realize that these people were in cahoots with the white-haired girl. Most importantly, Yang Zongliang hadn't returned. From his belongings, they saw that he was dead, killed by Ling. After learning that he hadn't returned, although Zhang Qingshan also hadn't returned, Fang Lingjie and the higher-ups still confidently decided to launch an attack. They had lost people for nothing, while the other side was unscathed. As the largest organization on Channel 666, weren't they becoming a laughingstock? They had to avenge this. Chapter 185. Return to the Yin family. The next day, Ling's 9th day on the island, was also the day she was fully focused on attending the family gathering. The Yin family's old residence was located in a secluded area outside the North 3rd Ring Road. The head of the family resided there year-round, while the other family members were scattered elsewhere. Except for holidays and special occasions, they rarely gathered together. While ostensibly a harmonious family gathering, each one was actually fraught with undercurrents. At least since Ling could remember, not a single one of these gatherings had passed peacefully. Since Lin wasn't there to take her, Ling had to take a taxi alone. Her home was located on the South 3rd Ring Road. Reaching the family estate required crossing the entire city, a considerable distance that took an hour by car. After seeing the destination was the Inn residence and the passenger's white hair, the taxi driver didn't dare to speak the entire way, even turning off the music and radio. Ling could see that these ordinary people seemed to fear the Inn family. What secrets were hidden there? The journey was long, and she occasionally looked out the window, gazing at the familiar yet strange city. When would she be able to return to reality? She only hoped the real world wasn't as cruel as the system portrayed. From afar, Ling saw the magnificent manor, the location of the Yin family estate. There were no people around, and even vehicles were scarce. The place was like a forbidden zone. She got out of the car and walked step by step toward the manor. There were even 2 bodyguards hired at the entrance. They possessed professional knowledge and were familiar with the entire Yin family, able to clearly distinguish all its members. They naturally recognized Ling. Although her status was somewhat questionable, it wasn't something these 2 bodyguards dared to discuss casually. Missin. They bowed their heads respectfully and opened the gate for her. Entering the estate, she didn't have time to admire the surrounding scenery but walked directly towards the manor house. Suddenly, a white figure blocked her path. Oh, isn't this Missin? Get out of my way. Ling looked at the woman in front of her. Unexpectedly, the woman slapped her across the face. But Ling was no longer the same person she used to be. She extended her arm and easily gripped the woman's slender wrist. No matter how hard the girl struggled, she couldn't break free. Ling, you? Before the girl could finish her sentence, she fell to her knees with a pained expression. Ling coldly retracted her arm and continued walking towards the manor house. The 2 bodyguards at the entrance acted as if they hadn't seen anything, continuing to look straight ahead. She wasn't late, but some of the younger generation arrived early to show their diligence. The hall was already filled with people, all from the younger generation, her cousins. She didn't have much of an impression of them. While some in this cold family disliked her, most were like strangers. They rarely interacted, only exchanging brief greetings at large gatherings. She didn't have many memories of the head of the family, her grandfather. After all, everyone present was his direct descendant. He had more than a dozen grandchildren. How could he notice Ling? She casually found a seat and sat down. There were no enforcers present, and she didn't see Lin, so she stayed by herself in a corner. But trouble wouldn't let her off so easily. The girl from outside entered the hall and shouted as soon as she stepped in, "Brother, this bastard hit me." Her appearance was somewhat disheveled, attracting everyone's attention. The girl's brother felt his face burning with shame and stood up. He ignored his sister and walked directly towards Ling. Since when are savages allowed in here? As a man, he adhered to the principle of not striking first. He would only retaliate if provoked. Ling was preoccupied with her phone, ignoring him. This angered him. "I'm talking to you, you bastard born without proper upbringing." Bang! As soon as he finished speaking, the man was sent flying unexpectedly and crashed heavily to the ground. Although the carpet cushioned the fall, it was a slap not only to his face, but also to his entire family's. "You're courting death." The man struggled to his feet. His other siblings stood by, watching the spectacle, none intending to intervene. "Enough." A deep, authoritative voice rang out, and Dongjia, the third son of the Yin family, descended the stairs, putting an end to the youngster's farce. This person was Ling's father. However, his pupils constricted slightly before he quickly masked the shock on his face. Above Ling's head, there was a line of small text, Enforcer 002. Indeed, Dongjia was an enforcer. "I can't believe you've actually given me a reason to kill you." Ling's face revealed unprecedented coldness. Since she had transmigrated into this body, she was now her. Even without the added motivation of her identity, she would still eliminate this scum. Third uncle. Third uncle. The younger generation immediately quieted down. With an elder present, they no longer dared to act rashly, greeting him politely. Only Ling sat silently in her place. "Ling, come with me to see your grandfather." And Dongjia stood on the stairs, looking at her. His tone was calm, yet different from the indifference Ling remembered. She didn't speak, silently standing up and walking upstairs. She was naturally curious about this grandfather whom she had barely met in her memories. This scene infuriated the younger generation present. Meeting the grandfather alone was an excellent opportunity to make a good impression, but they couldn't do anything about it. Their uncles were all upstairs accompanying their grandfather, and it was clearly the grandfather's intention to see Ling even though he was advanced in age. His status within the family remained unshakable. As long as he lived, they would never dare to challenge him. "Don't worry, grandfather values legitimacy. This bastard has no chance. I guess grandfather remembered he has another granddaughter. Ha ha ha." The younger generation below began to murmur amongst themselves. Upstairs, Ling followed Dongjia to a room in silence. The atmosphere between them was strangely tense. She didn't act like a daughter, and he didn't act like a father. Chapter 186. Entering the An estate. A violent clash. Knock, knock. A knock on the door. "Come in." A deep, slightly aged voice came from inside. Dongjia pushed the door open and walked in, and Ling close behind. The room was a tea room, and 5 people were sitting on the sofa, chatting and laughing. The old man, the head of the family, sat at the head. He also had white hair, and if not for the wrinkles on his face, it would be hard to tell his advanced age. The other 4 were Ling's 2 uncles and 2 granduncles. The moment she entered the room, everyone turned their gazes towards her, scrutinizing her. "Sit down." The head of the family spoke, an elderly man with an incredibly powerful aura. At this moment, Ling wasn't paying attention to these things. Her pupils constricted slightly. She remained standing and asked directly, "Tell me, what did you call me here for?" In her memory, the head of the family had never spoken to her so kindly, and Ling had never dared to address her grandfather in such a manner. But both Dongjia and the other uncles remained strangely calm, showing no surprise in their eyes. Ling knew her identity was likely exposed, because her grandfather, the head of the Yin family, was Enforcer 001. He was 001, and Dongjia was 002. Their purpose in calling her here was self-evident. She was prepared to fight at any moment, but for some reason, she still wanted to hear what the old man had to say. The head of the family wasn't angered by Ling's reaction. Instead, he raised his teacup and took a slow sip. After a moment, he spoke, "What do you think of the Yin family?" "Heh," and Ling sneered, "the family business is indeed very successful. I won't comment on the others, but this one next to me is a piece of trash." "You." And Dongjia was about to retort, but was stopped by his father's gaze. "We do owe you and your brother." You didn't just call me here to say this, did you? And Ling swept her gaze across everyone. Just say what you want to say. How about joining us? As soon as the head of the family finished speaking, the others stood up, their eyes fixed on her. Up until now, no one has been able to surpass everyone else. You are the first. They all, without exception, chose the simplest method, killing each other. So you think I killed those enforcers just to show off my strength to you? And Ling sneered. You think you're supreme beings, and I'm an intruder. In reality, you're just a group of pitiful people trapped here. You'll never know how vast the world is. The others glared at her with anger, itching to kill this arrogant girl. No, quite the contrary. The world is vast. Isn't it good to stay here as a local tyrant? Here, you have everything you want, a world that can be mistaken for reality. Then this is a real world. The head of the family's words confused the others, but Ling suddenly understood. He just wanted to find a successor. Indeed, perhaps he was once a powerful intruder, or rather, a survivor would be a more accurate term. His situation back then was likely similar to Ling's now, but he chose to state if this was true, it would explain why they couldn't transform into monsters. The family wasn't originally from this world. How do I compare to you back then? Ling asked with a playful smile. Stronger. The head of the family calmly admitted. Then what do you think my chances of winning are? She asked again. 0. Boom. Countless sword auras erupted, and terrifying explosions mixed with magma instantly destroyed everything around them. No one expected Ling, seemingly a gentle lamb, to suddenly attack them, a pack of wolves. The younger generation downstairs heard the explosion and looked up. What happened? This wasn't the kind of commotion caused by ordinary means. The next second, they saw a figure fall heavily from the second floor. They looked carefully, and 2 people in the crowd's eyes suddenly narrowed. Dad, what happened up there? Did you anger grandfather? Everyone assumed the attack came from the head of the family, disciplining his sons. Gather everyone immediately. The man ordered the younger generation. Ling is an intruder, kill her without mercy. He then rushed upstairs. On the second floor, Ling's attack had instantly repelled everyone. They all suffered varying degrees of injury, except for Ndongjia and the old man. Her thrusting longsword clashed against the head of the family's palm. A golden barrier on his palm blocked the blade's attack. Ndongjia attacked from behind, and Ling dodged, leaping away to face the father and son. Decisive action, good strength. No wonder you're confident enough to kill everyone. He acknowledged Ling's strength. I think you're afraid I'll destroy the family you've worked so hard to build. Ling said coldly to be why now. The others had recovered and surrounded her. The sound of hurried footsteps came from downstairs as the younger generation and family bodyguards rushed up. Soon, more than 20 people surrounded her, all with white hair. They were all members of the family. Attack. The head of the family stepped back and ordered everyone around him. From their brief clash, he sensed Ling's strength. As he was already old, the best way to kill her was to have others exhaust her strength first. Upon hearing the order, everyone lunged at Ling suddenly. A white-haired figure appeared beside her. An endless icy power surged out, freezing everything around them. Yet, the center area remained untouched. Ling looked at the person beside her, surprise on her face. Of course, the surrounding and family members were equally astonished. The newcomer was none other than Ling's brother in this world, Lin. But what surprised Ling wasn't Lin's identity as Enforcer 003, but the fact that he was helping her. Lin, are you crazy? She's not your sister. She's an intruder. Ndongjia roared angrily. The others were also repelled by Lin's attack, staring at him in a daze. They had no idea why this was happening. What if she's an intruder? What if she's not? Lin flicked his hand and said indifferently, as far as I'm concerned, she is my sister. Chapter 187. The End. Your brain must be filled with donkey dung. How could I have such an idiot son? Ndongjia cursed in a rage. Correction. From that day forward, you cease to be our father. Lin turned to Ling. You deal with the old man. I'll handle the rest. As always, he didn't wait for a reply before charging forward. As Enforcer 003, only Enforcer 002, Ndongjia, could put up a fight against him. The others were merely cannon fodder. The head of the family, standing at the back, gritted his teeth in anger. He was well aware of Lin's strength, but he never imagined his son would betray the family for an intruder. The entire second floor instantly descended into chaos, becoming a battlefield. The younger generation, mammoth tier at best, whether facing Lin or Ling, were struggling to survive, let alone contribute to the fight. Their hopes of impressing the head of the family by killing Ling were dashed. A golden sword aura flashed, instantly piercing the wall. A flying sword thrust towards the old man, forcing him back, and Ling immediately pursued. "You really intend to exterminate us all?" the head of the family roared. "It seems you've been here too long. Since when did you start uttering such naive words?" Ling taunted, her attacks relentless, countless sword auras ravaging the hall in an instant. The sofa, TV, refrigerator, clock, chandelier, and all other furniture were sliced cleanly apart like tofu. Numerous sword marks appeared on the walls, and the entire manor began to tremble, as if on the verge of collapse. However, these dense and powerful attacks had no effect on the old man. A golden barrier around him blocked all the sword auras. In the next moment, his figure vanished from Ling's sight. Ling felt an invisible attack coming towards her. She immediately swung her sword, severing it. But then, more invisible attacks surged from all directions, hundreds of them. Her eyes couldn't see them, but her ability wouldn't deceive her. In an instant, she unleashed hundreds of sword auras to counter these unseen attacks. Bang! The head of the family suddenly appeared behind her, his fist barely blocked by Ling's sword. Swish! She instantly moved, two invisible attacks grazing her clothes, revealing her snow-white shoulder. Ling glanced sideways, her expression grave. These attacks originated from his fists. At such close range, she couldn't defend in time, and his speed was extremely fast, making it difficult to create distance. If this continued, she would inevitably be injured. The head of the family, Enforcer 001, was also a war chariot tier expert. Whoosh! A sword light flashed, and he instantly disappeared, reappearing in the distance. Another sword light followed, and he vanished again. Ling attacked continuously, and he kept teleporting, but getting closer and closer to her. Just as he was about to reach her, a circular slash swept out in a 360-degree arc. The sword aura burned with flames, radiating scorching heat that seemed to melt everything. He sneered and teleported past the slash. Appearing before Ling suddenly, he froze, looking down. The sand and stones on the ground had somehow bound his feet. Then he saw seedlings sprouting from the ground. The next second, a giant tree shot up, its vines firmly binding him. Several invisible attacks flashed, shattering the tree, and he landed successfully, a disgusted expression on his face. "These guys, even in death they won't leave me in peace." As soon as he finished speaking, he sensed something and teleported away again. But because he was slightly slower, his chest was grazed by a sword, blood slowly seeping out, staining his suit. "You!" He was about to speak, but abruptly clutched his chest, coughing up a mouthful of blood. Strange black lines crawled across his body, a curse. At the same level, it applied a weakening effect. Unfortunately for him, Ling's blessing today wasn't stroke of luck, so the instant kill hadn't triggered. Otherwise, he would already be dead. She wouldn't give him a chance to recover. Several sword lights attacked again. This time, the head of the family's movements were noticeably slower, his attacks weakened. Ling had realized his golden barrier and invisible attacks were two different abilities, and he couldn't use other abilities while teleporting. This gave her an opportunity. As long as she predicted his landing spot and seized the moment after his teleport, she could easily injure him. He, on the other hand, could only harm her at close range. Once the distance widened, the head of the family would undoubtedly lose. Just then, a card suddenly flew towards Ling. She caught it steadily and looked up at the second floor. Lin, covered in blood, walked out, holding a sword, a smile on his face. He had actually defeated 002. The sword was Ling's, left behind for him to use in a crucial moment. But he seemed to have known everything and used her sword to kill Dongjia. Right? Perhaps enforcers didn't drop cards when killing each other? He deliberately used Ling's sword to kill him. Special enhancement card. Lightning. Description. Can control the power of lightning, enhancing all attacks. Ling glanced at it and immediately used it. In the next second, she felt her body surge with power. A sword soared into the air, bursting with dazzling golden lightning. The power of lightning swept across the hall, instantly paralyzing the head of the family. Already weakened and now further hampered by the lightning's paralyzing effect, his movements became even slower. And Ling unleashed her full power. Countless sword lights surged towards him like a storm, some covered in flames, some in lightning, some carrying earthy yellow and grass-green energy. Various attacks ravaged the surroundings, dense and inescapable. My life ends here. Knowing death was inevitable, the head of the family ceased resisting, standing there waiting for the onslaught. Perhaps the loss of the family had robbed him of his will to live, or maybe he had simply lived long enough. Who knew? In any case, as the head of the family's body fell, transforming into a card, and Ling knew that everything was finally over. Chapter 188. A Conversation with Lin. Why are you helping me? Ling asked Lin, voicing her confusion. He went downstairs and casually sat down, ignoring his injuries. Because you're my sister, he said plainly. I'm an intruder, not from your world. I'm not the Ling you know, Ling explained, clearly not quite believing his reason. I know, he said, his tone still flat. Then you know my mission in this world? Kill all the enforcers. Only then can you leave this world. His words stunned Ling. Since you know, why are you still helping me? I said, you're my sister. This time, Ling fell silent, unsure how to respond. Seeing her silence, Lin began to explain. I haven't actually gone to work these past few days. From 9 days ago, when you first came home, I started suspecting your identity. As an enforcer, I know the exact time intruders arrive. I captured a few intruders and got what I wanted from them. It turns out we're all just frogs in a well. This world, everything here. I never thought it could be fictional. The reason we exist might be because of the arrival of intruders like you. It was hard for me to accept this fact at first. I investigated the truth of this world, and the family was undoubtedly the best place to start. Finally, my suspicions were confirmed in the head of the family's room. Our world is just a projection of your world. You've always been the real Ling, and I'm the fake Lin. You are real, while we are forever trapped in this falsehood. Perhaps one day, due to the influence of that supreme power, we'll repeat the same day over and over. What's the difference between that and being puppets? I don't want to be a puppet. I decided to do what I want. In my world, you're undoubtedly the most important person, even if you're an intruder. Even if I'm a fake brother, I will still choose to protect my real sister. Ling wanted to speak but stopped, unsure what to say. Lin, sitting on the sofa, smiled and continued, I know. You want to say that we're like implanted programs, and the identity implanted in me is Lin. So I became your brother, right? Ling nodded. Then who can guarantee that there are no gods or a god in your real world? Who can guarantee that your life isn't also an implanted program? Ling was taken aback. She had transmigrated here, taking over the original Ling's identity and living in this world. Wasn't this also a form of replacement? You're right. So, you chose to follow your heart. Yes. Setting aside the enforcer and intruder situation, everything around you should be exactly the same as in your memory, right? Lin asked his biggest question. Ling didn't speak, only nodding silently. Then your brother in the real world must also love you very much. Yes, his personality is exactly the same as yours. As Ling said this, Lin suddenly laughed. Then how am I not your brother? If our roles were reversed, he would do the same thing. He stood up and straightened his somewhat tattered clothes. All right, living like a puppet in this false world is meaningless. It's time for you to go back. Ling stared at him for a long while before saying, Thank you. Can you call me brother? Brother. Lin smiled. At this moment, it seemed as if all burdens had been lifted. He slowly closed his eyes. Ling's right hand, gripping the sword, trembled slightly. Finally, she raised her weapon. Rumble. The ground shook violently, and large cracks appeared throughout the manor. Everything around them began to collapse, walls crumbling and dissipating like foam before hitting the ground. Everything was melting, the world collapsing. In a daze, everything around her disappeared completely. Ling stood alone on a deserted island, 2 enhancement cards lying quietly on the ground. She looked around. The island was flat, with the seashore visible at a glance. There was nothing on the island except for numerous naked survivors lying scattered not far away. And Ling quickly checked herself. She was clothed, wearing the same outfit from the battle, albeit with 2 tears on the shoulders. There were at least a few hundred survivors, all lying scattered on the ground. She went to a woman and checked her body. Although not a doctor, she could tell that these people were all in a state of suspended animation. So, everything was an illusion. She shook her head with a wry smile. This was the true appearance of the survival island. And on the entire island, only Ling was awake. These people had all chosen to stay, sleeping until their painless deaths. She was the only one who survived on this island. Of course, if she had chosen to kill all the intruders, only one would have survived. This is good too. Let them remain painless until their deaths. And Ling examined the 2 cards in her hand. Special Enhancement Card. Space. Description. Use this to master a series of incredible spatial magic. Special Enhancement Card. Frost. Description. His selfless offering allows you to wield all the power of ice. And Ling was taken aback. She stretched out her hand, and in the next second, her entire arm transformed into ice, radiating a chilling cold. She had a feeling that even if her arm shattered now, it would regenerate. Wasn't this equivalent to gaining the ability of elementalization? The other abilities she had obtained weren't like this. They required her sword to be used, like enchantments. This frost power, however, was more like adding a new class to her. So, a selfless offering grants all of their abilities? And Ling pondered with a blank expression, then slowly walked towards the seashore alone. The sea was calm, like stagnant water, its depths dark. The sun in the sky was red, not hot, and there were no seabirds or fish in sight. So, this was the world where the survival island was located. Half an hour later, the light screen prompt finally appeared, and Ling stood up from the seashore. It's finally time to leave this place. Chapter 189. Return and Island Expansion. Island name, Vice City. Completion time, 9 days. Completion rating, S. Rewards. Upgrade cards *5. Points *1000. Bonus rewards. Enforcer kills points *2400. Puppet kills points *1855. Next island countdown. 14 days 11 hours 17 minutes. And Ling stood in the villa's hall, looking at her backpack and clothes on the sofa, then at the reward summary. Undoubtedly, this island had been extremely difficult, and the rewards were correspondingly generous. 5 upgrade cards alone was a significant haul. A fireplace had appeared in the hall at some point, a burning coal fire radiating warmth. Despite wearing a short skirt, she felt no heat. The door was closed, and Ling looked out the window at the seaside scenery and froze. It's snowing outside? She stepped out of the villa in disbelief. An icy wind, laden with snow, blew into the house, sending a chill through her. On the island, Rui was busy working alone in the pasture. Seeing Ling, he paused, then a look of delight spread across his face. Where are the others? Ling asked, hugging herself against the cold, standing at the doorway. They went to the resource island. Suyu is on the 3rd floor. I'm just finishing up the pasture. The next event is coming soon, and the weather doesn't look too friendly, Rui explained. Okay, you keep busy. Ling quickly closed the door and turned to go upstairs. Suyu had taken over Li Xinyue's work, selling architectural products at the exchange. She was constantly scrolling through the screen, contacting buyers, trying to maximize profits, completely unaware of Ling's arrival. Business seems to be booming, huh? Ling's voice came from behind, startling Suyu. Ling, when did you get back? Just now. How did the mission go? Are you injured? I thought you went in naked. Suyu looked her over, noticing the unfamiliar clothes. She knew instantly they were from the survival island. Are you hurt? She stood up to examine the torn fabric on Ling's shoulder, only realizing the shoulder itself was unharmed after seeing the black strap underneath. No, if I could get injured there, probably no one could have made it back alive from that island. She spread her hands in exasperation. So how many people survived your island? She thought for a moment. Theoretically, just me. Even if others are alive, they won't be coming back. Huh? So it was still that dangerous? So you couldn't understand why there was such a disparity between their survival islands, despite supposedly being the same system. High risk, high reward. Just how I like it. And Ling grinned. This meant her ability level would rise faster. The two chatted in the room. During their absence, the island had undergone a dramatic transformation. The island's area was now 2,200 square meters, double its previous size, thanks to the combined points of the others and the cornerstone cards from Chan Rui's trading. In short, just the four of them returning had expanded the island by over 1,000 square meters. The embankments at the island's edge could no longer be called embankments. All four sides were now massive stone walls over 3 meters high, each with an opening near the base for weapon emplacements. These had been built after the Ark's attack. The farm had also been expanded and had already yielded a harvest, more than enough to feed the 5 of them. Chen Rui was still upgrading the pasture. In anticipation of extreme weather, he had also built a thermal power generator, and the fireplace in the villa was also his creation. The architect was undoubtedly a very useful profession. Based on past experience, this event was clearly related to cold weather, and everyone understood the potential consequences. This was why they were preparing in advance. In addition, Qin Xiao had keenly identified a business opportunity. Weapons had sold well during the last sea beast attack, so heating equipment would likely be the best seller this time. He had already informed Chen Rui, who was currently developing them, planning to make a killing during the event. Of course, it was also to save more people. After all, no one could bear to see so many innocent survivors die needlessly, right? Qin Xiao had even released the news in advance on the channel to help returning survivors save their points. Furthermore, the number of ships docked at the port had been reduced from 5 to 1. Chen Rui's plan was to build a powerful mobile fortress, a large ship that would make it easier for everyone to move around. He had been too busy to start on it yet. So you simply summarized their recent development plans for Ling? That's a good plan. It seems only you and Chen Rui need the boat. Ling smiled. She could fly on her sword. Qin Xiao could ride his sea beast, and Li Xinyue could transform into water. None of them needed to worry about entering the sea, and they were all faster than a ship. What are you talking about? Qin Xiao doesn't only have one sea beast. We can ride them too, Suyu mumbled. As they spoke, Ling opened the light screen and spent 5,000 points to expand the island by another 500 square meters, bringing the total area to 2,700 square meters. She had 2,755 points remaining, enough for the group's needs. Chen Rui's future trades would also bring in more cornerstone cards, allowing for further expansion, but points, once spent, were gone for good, unlike cards, which couldn't be converted back into points. By the way, the Ark organization came looking for us earlier, but we drove them back, Suyu said with a hint of worry. How did they find us? Ling was curious. No one had revealed their location. Is everyone okay? We're fine. Their leader didn't come. Otherwise, you wouldn't be seeing me today. Suyu joked. Now that Ling was back, she didn't need to worry too much about their retaliation. Of course, even if Ling hadn't reached War Chariot tier, they had a backup plan. The large ship Chen Rui was planning to build, if they couldn't fight, they would run. Don't worry, I was meek and mild before entering the island, but now I'm ready to unleash my fury, Ling said with a smile. A mere War Chariot tier awakened is nothing. Chapter 190. Unleashing Fury on the Ark. That evening, Qin Xiao and Li Xinyue returned. Everyone bustled about, preparing a table full of delicious food, sitting together and chatting about future plans. Ling recounted her bizarre experiences, omitting any mention of her true origins. Everyone listened with fascination. Although they were partners, they hadn't inquired about each other's backgrounds since arriving here. They had only exchanged phone numbers, just in case one day they truly escaped this hellish place. Of course, initially, everyone harbored the same thoughts as other survivors, contemplating whether to stay in the simulated worlds. After all, if those worlds were identical to reality, it would be far better than endlessly struggling for survival on this island. But when Ling revealed that everything was an illusion, everyone fell silent. They would rather struggle for survival than die so meaninglessly. Considering their circumstances, living in a villa, having meat and vegetables every day, and possessing top-tier strength, apart from the unknown dangers of the survival islands, there were no real threats to their lives. Life on Construction Island was comparatively comfortable. What about the Ark? Qin Xiao asked Ling. The Ark was the only organization they had encountered so far that posed a genuine threat to their lives. Simple. They attacked us, we attacked them back. Ling smiled confidently. Hearing her say this, Everyone relaxed. Clearly, she had reached the war chariot tier and was brimming with confidence in her strength. This was understandable. After all, one was an ordinary awakened, and the other was a hidden class awakened. Even at the same tier, their strength wouldn't be on the same level. Moreover, after killing so many enforcers and gaining so many powerful abilities, she was practically invincible in battle. Let's go together tomorrow. Fighting is my specialty, and Ling said. Everyone thought she was asking for help, but her next words left them speechless. That island is huge. Make sure you collect all the spoils. Huh, so we're just there to clean up, huh? Li Xinyue quipped. She knew that in Ling saying this meant she had absolute confidence in her own strength. You're complaining about picking up money? And Ling rolled her eyes. No, I'm happy to. They exchanged a few more words before returning to their rooms to sleep. The next day, Ling woke up early. She climbed out of bed and looked out the window. The snow was falling even heavier now. The temperature outside was below freezing, and a thin layer of ice had formed on the sea surface. Covered with snow, everything was a vast expanse of white. The boundless sea had transformed into a boundless ice field. However, the ice wasn't thick enough to support a person's weight. And Ling rotated the pendant around her neck. Let's see what today's blessing is. Blessing pendant bonus. Stroke of luck. No doubt about it. You are the luckiest person alive. Remaining time. 18 hours, 21 minutes, 21 seconds. Stroke of luck. Wouldn't this mean one-shotting everyone? She went downstairs. The others knew about today's operation and were already up. After all, the 5th Sea region wasn't close. At their current level, it would take at least 6 hours to reach, assuming they used their abilities and didn't travel by boat. Right, there's something I forgot to tell you, Suyu said as she served breakfast, remembering something upon seeing Ling. What is it? Ling sat down, and the others looked at Suyu curiously. It's not a big deal, but since we returned from the survival island, the number of survivors in all channels has drastically decreased, Suyu explained. Everyone reacted with surprise. I remember now. I was the first to return, on the 5th day. That day, tens of thousands of channels merged. On the 6th day, there were another 3,000. Chun Rue started to speak, but Li Xinyue interrupted him. The 3 of us returned on the 7th day. Thousands of channels merged that day, but the number decreased afterwards. Most survivors clear the island in 6 or 7 days. The rest probably all died. Yes, just in channel 666, more than a dozen channels have merged with us these past few days, Qin Xiao added. An Ling hadn't noticed this. She opened the light screen and checked the channel chat. Indeed, the number of people displayed was close to 200,000. How many channels are there now? I don't know. The numbering is completely messed up now. It's impossible to tell, Suyu shrugged. Only the system would know. Are you worried that the Ark might recruit others these past few days? And Ling asked. Not really. It's just that 200,000 people is a lot. There might be other powerful awakened hidden among them. They can't just awaken directly to King Tier, can they? If that were the case, that person would be the true chosen one. And this wouldn't be survival, but a massacre. Don't worry. The more people the Ark has, the more resources we'll get, right? And Ling said nonchalantly. Besides, even in the same channel, they had never actively offended anyone, so there was nothing to fear. She pushed open the villa door and stepped outside. I'll go ahead. You guys are too slow. Make sure to keep up. With that, she stepped onto her flying sword and shot into the sky, disappearing from sight at an incredible speed. So fast? Qin Xiao was stunned. If the Ark leader had been that fast, they wouldn't have had a chance to escape. Was the difference between War Chariot Tier Awakened that significant? Or was it the difference between a cultivator and unawakened? The 3 didn't waste any more time. They mounted Qin Zhao's sea beasts and set off for the 5th Sea region. As for Qin Rue, his main body lacked combat power. He was better suited for base defense, so he stayed behind to continue his work. Meanwhile, at the Ark's headquarters, Zhang Qingshan and Feng Linjie were organizing a large group of people to attack the island again. When Zhang Qingshan returned and learned of the heavy losses on the survival island, coupled with the news of the failed attack on Ling's island, he was furious and decided to take matters into his own hands. He would show those ignorant fools what a true War Chariot Tier expert was capable of. Set off. With his command, a large fleet of ships carrying survivors set sail towards the 6th Sea region. Chapter 191. Encounter at Sea. On the other side, and Ling was rapidly advancing towards the 5th Sea region. 2 hours later, just as she entered the boundary of the 5th Sea region, a large number of ships appeared within her sight. These ships were naturally not as fast as her. Although there was wind on the sea, they still needed to break through the ice, and their progress was even slower than usual. As the distance closed, she saw a familiar figure on one of the ships, Fong Lingjie, and the word Ark written on the sail. What a coincidence, they're practically delivering themselves to me, she sneered, pointing her sword towards the sea and charging forward. On the sea, Zhang Qingshan and Fong Lingjie also noticed the white-haired figure in the sky. How audacious, she actually dared to come to us. The island master smiled gleefully and immediately signaled for everyone to stop. He intended to personally deal with this hateful individual. Brother Fong, just watch my performance. I'll avenge Brother Yang. Thank you, Brother Zhang. Fong Lingjie consciously took a step back. He already knew he was no match for the opponent, and he certainly didn't have the confidence now. Zhang Qingshan instantly transformed into a purple bolt of lightning and soared into the sky. As an awakened with lightning abilities, he possessed the power of short-term flight. Moreover, after transforming into lightning, his speed was incredibly fast. In almost the blink of an eye, he had already reached Ling, and their attacks collided violently. Purple lightning raged, seemingly trying to instantly roast his opponent, but the sword light facing him emitted an earthy yellow energy that completely isolated his lightning, rendering it useless. Just as Zhang Qingshan was momentarily stunned, several sword lights instantly attacked him. He tried to use lightning to deflect them, but golden lightning also erupted from these swords. The two types of lightning bombarded each other, detonating in the air in an instant. He decisively retreated, simultaneously unleashing his strongest move. A thick bolt of lightning emerged from his body, striking directly towards the sky. Boom! A thunderclap echoed through the sky, followed by a massive bolt of lightning, thick as a heavenly tribulation, descending from above, carrying a terrifying aura of destruction. Blood splattered. Zhang Qingshan clutched his neck in terror, but blood still gushed out uncontrollably. His face was filled with shock. He wanted to say something. He opened his mouth, but found that he couldn't utter a single word. His throat was leaking air, only accelerating the flow of blood. He couldn't understand why the opponent was so fast. He was lightning himself. What kind of speed could be faster than his? He had clearly calculated the distance just now. She shouldn't have been able to arrive so quickly. That's right. Fong Lingjie's intel must have been wrong. Flashy. And Ling stared at him and said indifferently. Then she instantly disappeared. Zhang Qingshan's eyes widened, and only at this moment did he understand. The heavenly tribulation lightning that descended from the sky instantly engulfed him, and his entire body was reduced to ashes under the scorching heat. The people below were all taken aback. Fong Lingjie's face was filled with disbelief. They were only separated by one survival island. How could the opponent's strength have increased so much? Even if she had advanced to the chariot level, she shouldn't be able to instantly kill Zhang Qingshan, who was also at the chariot level. Recalling the moment in the media when the opponent killed Yang Zongliang, they had seen it clearly in the video. At that time, the opponent's strength was definitely still at the elephant level. What exactly happened to her on that survival island that was close to the real world? At this moment, there was no time for Fong Lingjie to think. The movement speed of these ships was too slow, and coupled with such bad weather, it was impossible to escape from the opponent's grasp. Fortunately, Zhang Qingshan had brought enough manpower this time, more than 50 elephant-level individuals. Surely their dazzling abilities could hold the opponent back for a while, right? He immediately returned to the cabin, intending to find a small boat and escape during the chaos. Unfortunately, his abilities didn't provide him with any convenience for survival on the sea. Boom! A huge golden sword light flashed, and Fong Lingjie froze on the spot. He saw a straight crack appear on the ship beneath his feet, from bow to stern. The next second, the entire ship was instantly sliced in half. With a rumbling sound, debris flew, and it began to sink into the sea. Everyone was once again shocked, momentarily stunned and at a loss for what to do. Could they really deal with a powerhouse of this level? The opponent only needed to fly in the sky to easily sink all the ships. They had absolutely no room for resistance. And at this moment, Fong Lingjie was trembling all over, not daring to move an inch. The previous sword strike had just grazed him. He didn't believe that the opponent had missed intentionally. Damn it, she's coming for me. And Ling naturally wanted to keep one person alive. She was still counting on using the other party's inherited island master status to cash out for herself. Such a large construction island, with a population of over 200, definitely had abundant resources. And given this organization's character, the island master definitely wouldn't selflessly dedicate the resources for everyone's joint development. He must have hidden reserves. Sword light raged throughout the area, and countless flying swords danced in the air, forming a tornado of sword blades that tightly surrounded these people, tearing apart everything inside. With a thought from her, a red light flashed through it, and the next second the entire sword blade tornado transformed into a flame tornado. Only Fong Lingjie stood there dumbfounded, watching everything in front of him. This power was simply like a natural disaster. Was this the power of a chariot-level powerhouse? These survivors didn't even have time to resist. They and their ships were completely reduced to charred remains. And Ling stood on the ice, coldly observing everything. "Do you know why I'm keeping you alive? You want to seize the Ark's points," he said after a moment of silence. "Smart. There's no major grudge between us. No need to fight to the death. Cooperate with me well, and I'll give you two options," and Ling said, a faint smile on her lips. "Which two?" he asked in confusion. "Join us, or I'll let you go. I'm not afraid of letting a tiger return to the mountains or anything, because, as you know, you can't surpass me." Hearing Ling say this, Fong Lingjie finally felt relieved and nodded in agreement to cooperate with her. She grabbed him and headed towards the Ark's construction island. As for the debris on the sea, it would be forever frozen here with the wind and snow. A few hours later, when the three arrived, they were stunned by the scene before them. The ruins, the Ark's flag, and the corpses everywhere painted a grim picture. And Ling has already encountered them here in advance. Chapter 192. Beyond the Survival Island's Harvest. The situation looks pretty grim. "These people have been burned to a crisp," Li Xinhue commented. "By the way, when did Ling learn to play with fire?" "Don't worry about that. It seems she's fine. The Ark probably tried to attack again, and they just happened to run into Ling who had arrived. That's why they fought. Let's see if there's anything valuable. After searching, we'll head over there quickly." "Okay, but she really wasn't showing off. It seems like we're only fit for cleaning up the battlefield." The three rode their sea beasts and began searching the sea. However, most things had been burned to cinders, and there were hardly any valuables left. The only intact thing was probably the ship Fong Lingjie was on, the one that had been sliced in half by a sword strike. On the other side, in the 5th Sea region, the Ark's headquarters. And Ling had already arrived here with Fong Lingjie. A large number of personnel were still stationed on the island, of course. Most of these people had actually been tricked and deceived by Zhang Qingshan, and they had no direct hostility towards her. In fact, they were victims in this situation. And Ling was not someone who would wantonly slaughter innocents. She didn't intend to exterminate these people. After all, it was already incredibly difficult for them to survive here. On the contrary, her arrival and the killing of Zhang Qingshan were more like liberating these people. They would no longer be oppressed by him in the future. Not only would they not hate Ling, but they might even thank her. After all, most of the henchmen had already been killed by her. When these people saw Ling arrive on the island with Fong Lingjie captured, everyone's expressions were filled with astonishment, because they almost all knew that this high-ranking member had left with the island master, and they even took the same ship. Now, only the latter had returned as a prisoner, while the others were nowhere to be found. This led these survivors to think of a terrible and unbelievable idea. Could it be that the island master had been killed by the opponent? It wasn't until Ling had Fong Lingjie explain the situation to these stunned survivors that they incredulously accepted the fact. If it weren't for Fong Lingjie, a high-ranking member, still being present, they would have wanted to cheer immediately. The news quickly spread throughout the island, and many survivors put down their work and went to the center of the island to observe the situation. Of course, these people weren't here to besiege Ling. She couldn't be bothered with them, ignored their discussions, and walked straight towards the warehouse with Fong Lingjie. She didn't miss a single place where there was a chance of storing supplies. And as expected, Zhang Qingshan's room had even more good things. Foundation stone cards, positioning cards, enhancement cards, there were countless of them. There was even a skill card obtained from exploring resource islands. The moment Ling touched the card, the purple lightning pattern on it transformed into a sword, with several patterns on the blade, entwined with 5 different colored energies. Huh? Isn't the skill card unique? Can it change its judgment? A trace of doubt appeared on her face, and she immediately used her ring to scan the card. Skill card, swordsmanship. Remark: as the holder is deceased, the card will be reset to its initial state. So that's how it is. And Ling put away these cards and sat on the sofa in the room, quietly waiting. Although Fong Lingjie wasn't bound, he didn't dare to have a single thought of escaping and obediently stood in place. A few hours later, Su Yu and the others arrived one after another. Compared to Qin Xiao, the other two were visiting this place for the first time and were extremely curious about everything around them. This area is at least 20,000 square meters. Su Yu exclaimed. Well, look at how many people they have. I think after a few rounds of development, our island will soon surpass 10,000, Li Xinyue said, feeling that this island was only slightly larger, and that was only due to the advantage in numbers. As for other facilities and living aspects, they were simply too low-end. The four quickly gathered and began to jointly scavenge the island's resources. And Ling certainly wouldn't just listen to Fong Lingjie's words. If he said there was nothing, then there was nothing. And Ling didn't believe it. She had to find out for herself. The sky gradually became dim. The weather outside grew colder, and the blizzard intensified. And Ling glanced at the time. It would soon be night. By this time, everyone had almost finished collecting supplies. They gathered again, and Ling was the first to ask, how was the harvest? It's even more than what we got from the survival island this time. Li Xinyue replied with a smile, shaking her backpack. What everyone collected were only useful resources for them. They didn't deprive the island of essential living supplies such as food and fresh water. Otherwise, in this extreme weather, these survivors wouldn't be able to live, including some furnaces, braziers, coal, and other heating facilities and supplies. They also didn't take them. For the four of them, having developed to this point, their island had long since had no shortage of these basic resources. As for the points accumulated by the several hundred survivors on the island, Fong Lingjie had already converted them all into foundation stone cards. The function of points had no direct relationship to these people's lives, so everyone naturally didn't hold back. There's nothing of value left here. Let's go, and Ling said to everyone. Fong Lingjie, who was standing beside them, finally breathed a sigh of relief. But suddenly, a sharp blade light struck. He tried to dodge, but found that his body couldn't move at all. The surrounding space seemed to be frozen. He could only watch helplessly as the blade light sliced through his body. Blood splattered. Qin Xiao ended his life with one strike. In the end, he didn't even have a chance to utter a word. There were two reasons for killing him. First, with him around, this place would sooner or later become a second Arkansas. Second, as a fellow hidden class, his potential was definitely no lower than Ling's own. If they didn't eradicate the problem now, it would be a huge disaster in the future. As for everything she had said before, it was just to get him to cooperate honestly. Besides, Ling spread her hands. I didn't kill him. What does it have to do with me? It wasn't until they saw Fong Lingjie dead that the survivors on the island were completely declared free. Within Ling's absolute power, it was easy to find an oppressed survivor who would expose Zhang Qingshan's henchmen. This place had been completely purged. Qin Xiao then entrusted one of them to take charge of the intelligence organization and to liaise with him. Being able to latch onto this group's thigh, the person naturally agreed, and the cooperation was quickly reached. Of course, rather than calling it cooperation, it would be more accurate to call it a superior-subordinate relationship. This was the status brought by absolute power. Chapter 193. New Event, Underwater World? The group left the island with their backpacks and began to return to their own sea island. The wind and snow outside were now so heavy that they could obscure one's vision, and because it was nighttime, the temperature had also plummeted to a much lower level. This time, Ling didn't go ahead. Instead, she followed the others. Because the ice on the sea surface was getting thicker, the sea beasts spent more time breaking the ice as they moved forward. As for Li Xinyue, she had completely lost her ability to transform into water, unless she wanted to break through the ice and dive into the sea in such cold weather. Although she was riding on the back of a sea beast, her eyelashes and hair were covered with a layer of white frost, her face was frozen red and purple, and she kept cupping her hands to her mouth and breathing warm air. But she seemed to not feel the cold at all, and was unusually excited. Even Su Yu's mood was inexplicably great. Only Qin Xiao remained calm. Could it be that they were happy because they had returned with a full load? Haven't you guys ever seen snow? And Ling asked in confusion. I'm a native of Guangdong province in the south. I rarely see snow, let alone such heavy snow. This is my first time, she said excitedly, even reaching out to catch the falling goose feather-like snowflakes. Your looks and height don't seem like someone from the south, do they? Su Yu was taken aback. She had always thought the other girl was from the northeast. What? Xiao Tudou, literally little potato, a slang term for short southerners, is just a stereotype. There are tall ones too. It's just that the proportion is a little bit low, she explained. What about you, Su Yu? And Ling, flying in the sky, looked down at Su Yu, who was shivering from the cold. I'm also from the south, but in her opinion, I'm considered a northerner. Huh? What do you mean? Li Xinyue asked in confusion. Don't you people from Guangdong province always think that anywhere north of Guangdong is the north? Isn't it? 6. The group chatted all the way, and the time didn't seem to pass so slowly. It was already late at night when they returned to the sea island. During this period, Chenrue had been in contact with them. It wasn't until they returned that he went upstairs to rest. As for the four of them, they started their respective tasks, as they hadn't had time to eat after traveling for so long. Wow, that's so thoughtful. Su Yu lifted the lid of the pot and found that there was already a pot of preheated fish soup inside. Chenrue knew they must be cold from braving the wind and snow, so he had prepared it in advance. I can't believe it. He's usually so listless, but he's actually a warm-hearted guy. Li Xinyue also smiled and scooped several bowls for everyone and brought them to the dining table. The solar-powered streetlights outside had long been extinguished due to the lack of sunlight. They noticed that Chenrue had already finished renovating the pasture. The original open-air pasture had now become an indoor pasture with ventilation and heating facilities. This way, the animals wouldn't have to worry about starving to death, and it would also ensure a continuous source of meat for everyone. After all, they would eventually get sick of eating fish every day. If the survivors could really return to the real world one day, they probably wouldn't want to eat fish for the rest of their lives. After everyone had their fill, they returned to their respective rooms to rest. The next day, the time limit for the survival island ended, which also meant that the countdown to the first day of return had officially begun. Sure enough, an event popped up at this time. Current event, Glacial Ruins. Duration, until entering the next survival island. Introduction. The sleeping underwater ruins emit awe-inspiring power, and the terrifying energy shoots into the sky, affecting the entire world and plunging it into an unprecedented disaster. What is hidden in the ruins? Is it the legacy of a strongman? Or the power of a god? What are those deep-sea behemoths guarding? Everyone had a strange look on their faces when they saw this event. What kind of event is this? Are we supposed to go into the sea? Li Xinyue asked in confusion. It seems that since the last Sea Beast event, the events have started to become more and more perverted. So you felt that there might be a big problem in the sea. Given the system's nature, the impact of the ice age formed on the sea surface this time might not even be as significant as the last Sea Beast event. As long as the survivors prepared enough food and supplies and hid on the island until the next survival island arrived, they could safely survive this crisis. Just as the survival islands would become more difficult each time, would the events be easier than before? And Ling obviously didn't believe it. If there was no danger in the sea that could threaten the surface, then the only source of crisis could be the weather. Perhaps the weather would get colder and colder. -20°C was tolerable for ordinary people with warm measures, and even -30 or -40°C was no problem. But what if the temperature continued to drop? She immediately informed every one of her guests, and they thought it made sense. Indeed, given the system's cruelty, if there's something in the sea, it will definitely force us survivors to go into the water. Qin Xiao nodded in agreement. Then what should we do? Su Yu looked at Ling and asked. Let's put the big ship plan on hold for now and directly build something that can go into the sea, as well as diving equipment and the like, Ling said in a deep voice. Among those present, only Li Xinyue had the ability to go into the sea. Ling herself could only use her ability to isolate herself for short periods of diving. Okay, Chenrue nodded succinctly. Now that he was at the elephant level, he could certainly make these things, although they might be a bit crude. Moreover, as an ability user, he needed to consider fewer things when making these things. For example, adding abilities to them, these architectural mechanical creations completely didn't need to worry about the water pressure. Just like their current bodies, after multiple enhancements, they had long surpassed the scope of ordinary people. If everything was explained with common sense and science, then the entire world here could not be explained. Although the sea was frozen, the resource islands could still be located normally. Perhaps this was the power of the system. The only things to worry about were the weather and navigation issues. But these were not problems for Ling, because she could fly. Everyone also had to take advantage of the next few days to quickly raise their levels, improve the construction of the island, turn it into a sanctuary, and also to replenish supplies, etc. Everyone quickly began to act separately. The physically weak Suyu was in charge of trading, while Chen Rui started to build equipment.as for the remaining three. They all braved the blizzard and disappeared into the vast white expanse using their own methods. Chapter 194. Into the Depths. 7 days later, Chen Rui finally completed the submarine and everyone's diving suits in just these few days. The outdoor temperature had reached a terrifying -50 degrees Celsius. The accumulated snow alone was nearly a meter deep, not including the ice layer frozen on the sea surface due to the cold. This wasn't just harsh weather. It was a natural disaster. If it weren't for Chen Rui, the architect, constantly reinforcing the villa and strengthening the insulation inside, they wouldn't be having an easy time either. Even so, in these past few days, countless channels had merged again. One could imagine the countless survivors who had perished in this extreme cold. Of course, everyone's efforts during these days weren't in vain. Now, with this temperature, it was impossible to explore the resource islands outside, and everyone stayed put on their sea island. After absorbing a large number of resources from the ARC organization, their sea islands area had reached 5,500 square meters, barely half the size of the ARC organization's island. Considering there were only 5 people on the island, such a large area was more than enough for their survival. In addition, the villas, farms, pastures, warehouses, ports, and other facilities on the island had all been reinforced. Apart from being slightly inadequate in the face of this extreme cold weather, their sea island now resembled a massive fortress. Even Ling herself would need to spend a considerable amount of time to attack it with her abilities. This was everyone's precaution. Although they had Ling, a powerful combat force, there was no guarantee that she would always be there. These protective measures were naturally intended to prevent such emergencies. The resource island explorations during these days also yielded considerable gains, and everyone's skills had improved significantly, especially Ling. After her blessing became 5, her chances of randomly getting extremely lucky had increased. For 7 days, she hadn't missed a single day and had explored a total of 7 resource islands. Now, her skill level had risen from the previous LV.9 intermediate swordsmanship to the current LV.7 advanced swordsmanship at this point. It was no exaggeration to describe her as a sword Dao grandmaster, not just a master. Everyone was ready. They put on their diving suits inside the house, carrying 2 large oxygen tanks on their backs. Chen Rui had thoughtfully added communication devices and thermal insulation to the hoods. The snow and ice outside are so thick. How are we going to get down there? Li Xinyue voiced her question. They had experimented before, and clearing the snow and breaking through the more than 1 meter thick ice layer was no easy task. Moreover, due to the weather, it would quickly freeze again. Leave it to me, let's go. Ling said, and everyone went outside together, clearing the snow as they walked towards the port. The port had already been upgraded to an indoor port, and although it was still frozen inside, at least it wasn't as severe as outside. The submarine lay quietly there. It was originally floating on the surface but was now completely frozen. Since Chen Rui didn't know what a real submarine looked like, and those things in reality were too large, he incorporated his own ideas during the construction process. The submarine in front of them looked more like a flying saucer, and the semicircular middle was entirely made of glass, allowing for a 360-degree view of the surroundings. The edges of the disc were presumably used to store gases and to take in seawater. There were 4 seats inside, just enough for everyone to fit in. As Chen Rui went forward and activated it, the lights inside suddenly lit up in the deep sea. Lighting was essential for those without night vision. The 4, wearing somewhat cumbersome diving suits, sat in the cabin. Li Xinyue stood by the side. She wasn't even wearing a diving suit. After she was promoted to the elephant level, she gained an additional ability, the ability to breathe underwater, which greatly increased her survivability. Naturally, she no longer needed a diving suit. Shinrue sat in the driver's seat, adjusted his posture, and Suyu looked at Ling beside her. Ling reached out of the submarine and touched the ice surface. Everyone saw that Ling's arm also began to emit a chilling air. In the next second, it completely turned into blue ice and merged with the sea surface. Splash! The submarine suddenly sank, creating a splash. Ling retracted her hand and shook off the seawater. Let's go. This? Li Xinyue, who was on the shore, was stunned. Wasn't this the same as her water control ability? Ling, how many abilities do you have? Not many, just 5, 6, or 7. All gained on the islands. She chuckled. If the sea was Li Xinyue's domain, then this icy world was undoubtedly hers. Everyone stopped talking, and Shinrue immediately closed the hatch. With the humming sound of the submarine, the 4 instantly sank beneath the sea surface, disappearing from Li Xinyue's sight. She held the waterproof tablet Shinrue had specially made for her and followed, jumping into the water. Otherwise, the opening would freeze over again soon. Under the sea, due to the cover of the ice layer above and the lack of sunlight, even in the shallow sea, it was already pitch black. Even though the submarine's lights were enhanced, after being refracted by the water, they could still only illuminate a small area. Soon, Li Xinyue's figure flashed past them, heading towards the deeper parts. Here, the task of scouting was left to her. The submarine was still slowly descending. The sea beasts swimming around were wary of everything, along with Ling's extended ability in Suyu, the human radar. If anything happened, they would be able to detect and respond immediately. Due to the short construction time, the cabin wasn't equipped with any powerful weapons. Only the 4 seats were separated by compartments. If anyone wanted to leave, the partition would completely seal off the seat, and by opening the switch at the bottom, they could instantly enter the sea wearing their diving suits. As they descended deeper, the surroundings were no longer so desolate. Instead, they could see some deep-sea fish, including some sea beasts, but none dared to approach rashly because of the sea beasts escorting Qin Shao. Coupled with these unintelligent creatures' fear of the unknown, most would be scared away by the glowing submarine. The thermometer in the cabin indicated that the seawater temperature outside had reached over 10 degrees Celsius, completely different from the biting cold of the sea surface. The deep sea was even somewhat warm. I've reached the bottom. Li Xinyue's voice suddenly came through the intercom. Chapter 195, Deep Sea Ruins. What's the situation? Qin Shao immediately picked up his communicator to reply. Nothing at all. Sand, rocks, crabs, strange fish. Li Xinyue observed her surroundings, then paused. My visibility is very low. I can't see too far. Has Suyu noticed anything? No. I'm surrounded by the gazes of fish. There aren't even many sea beasts. She reported truthfully. There were too many fish here. She could sense the gaze of every fish that saw the submarine, requiring careful discernment. Moreover, the event description was clear. Underwater ruins. Since they were ruins, they should be inanimate objects. It would be more convenient for Ling to sense them. Which way do we go now? Li Xinyue asked. In this pitch-black ocean, there was no sense of direction, making it easy to get lost. The only discernible thing was up and down. To avoid accidents, Li Xinyue stayed within Ling's sensing range. This was also to prevent them from getting separated in the depths of the ocean. Of course, she couldn't drown and could even return to shore by herself. Ling didn't know where to go either. The event description was vague, with almost no clues. However, her blessing for the day was still extremely lucky, so she casually pointed in a direction and set off with the others. In the deep sea, time passed unknowingly. Ling felt awkward checking the pendant on her neck to confirm the time. They could only fix a direction and ensure a straight course, continuing forward. Finally, at the end of their limited vision in the darkness, something emitting a faint blue light appeared. Even from such a distance, they could see the light emitted by its large area. Everyone concluded that it wasn't some kind of fish. Shinrue, let me out. I'll take the lead. Ling spoke. She was worried about potential dangers ahead and felt it best to be at the forefront with her strength. After all, if there was something even she couldn't defeat, their only option would be to flee. Okay. Shinrue nodded. As he pressed the switch, 2 partitions rose around Ling's seat, completely isolating her from the other three. She placed the communication device near her collar and then put on her mask. Once the partitions fully enclosed her with a bang, the switch at the base opened and seawater poured in, instantly filling the small space. Her body followed the current and fell out of the submarine. And Ling's figure instantly vanished, heading forward. Reaching Li Xinyue's side, their eyes met briefly, signaling her to approach the submarine. Then, they both advanced towards the distant bluish area. She took out her weapon, using her ability to control the flying sword to cut through the water, holding onto the hilt as it carried her forward at high speed. Before even reaching the location, she saw what those glowing things were. It was a city. A ruined city in the deep sea? How is that possible? She exclaimed, her voice transmitted to the others. Is there any danger? Not yet. I'll go in and take a look. With that, Ling immediately swam towards the ruins. Ruins, relics. That was it. Perhaps this was the relic mentioned in the system event. Otherwise, a city submerged by the sea shouldn't emit such a strange light. Soon, she arrived above this city, emitting a faint blue light. Everything around was dilapidated. Most of the buildings inside had decayed from long-term immersion in seawater, covered in white, crystalline sea salt. When Ling saw the city center, there was a huge spherical building. It wasn't tall, but the light there was the brightest, and it looked more like a research facility. Just as she was about to move forward, a gigantic figure suddenly appeared in her sight. A pitch-black monster with a gaping maw swam towards her at incredible speed. Ling instantly vanished, reappearing above the monster. The massive body stirred up a current that passed beneath her, and the monster's appearance was fully revealed by her ability. Its head was wide and large, with fist-sized eyes emitting a red glow, 2 long whiskers on either side, and a body covered in fine scales. It was a long, serpentine monster. And Ling's first thought was, is this a dragon? But she quickly dismissed the idea. It had no limbs, only a body. Rather than a dragon, it was more accurate to call it a serpent. Seeing its prey escape, the monster immediately turned to strike again. And Ling didn't indulge it. With a casual wave of her hand, several sword lights poured forth. These sword energies emitted a golden glow, resembling meteors in the night sky as they danced in the dark ocean. The monster swished its tail, creating a huge surge of water. It opened its giant mouth, and a powerful storm instantly formed a vortex, trapping Ling inside. The noisy sounds transmitted through the communication device told everyone that Ling was fighting something. No one spoke. Chen Rue controlled the submarine, staying still and waiting for the outcome of the battle. Crack, crackle. A chilling air was released, and the water vortex created by the monster was instantly frozen by Ling, turning into a massive ice sculpture. Then, a sharp sword light flashed, easily shattering it. Dozens of flying swords shot out from behind Ling like bullets. The monster tried to knock down the flying swords with its tail, but just as its giant tail struck, the swords vanished. In a blink, the flying swords had pierced its body. The monster writhed in fury, but the frost power emanating from the swords instantly froze it. Boom! An explosion echoed as the frozen monster exploded, completely shattering into pieces that scattered in all directions. It's taken care of, and Ling calmly informed the others. The monster wasn't particularly strong, at most peak elephant level, but it was a marine creature, and they were in the deep sea, so killing it was a bit more troublesome. What was that just now? A dragon? Li Xinyue, also in the sea, had witnessed the battle. I don't know, but it was much larger than ordinary sea beasts. And Ling explained, stay put for now. I'll go in and take a look. Once I confirm it's safe, you can come in. I'll go with you. Li Xinyue quickly spoke up, then hesitated before agreeing. All right. In the deep sea, Li Xinyue wouldn't hold her back and might even be useful in many situations. Chapter 196, Blueprint of the Ruins. Arriving at the center of the ruined city, the Research Institute-like building appeared before them. It was completely enveloped by a faint blue energy. And Ling and Li Xinyue circled it, finding an entrance in a narrow space. The scene was strikingly similar to the Sovereign City. And Ling touched the energy layer, her arm easily passing through. Without any prompt, she stepped directly inside. Li Xinyue followed closely behind. They landed steadily, their feet on dry ground, covered in a thick layer of dust. There's no water? Li Xinyue exclaimed. And Ling then removed her mask, taking a deep breath. The air wasn't fresh, filled with the smell of mold and dust. Before them was a downward entrance, flanked by a row of tritium lamps emitting a dim light. The scene was eerie. A laboratory within a submerged city ruin with breathable air? This isn't some kind of nuclear testing lab, is it? Li Xinyue asked, apprehensive. Although their physical fitness far surpassed ordinary people, who knew if they could withstand nuclear radiation? Probably not. I think it's more likely related to the truth of this world, and Ling said calmly. Their communicators remained on, allowing those in the submarine to hear their conversation. Ling and Li Xinyue descended the stairs, which were long, estimated to be at least 10 meters deep. Every so often, they encountered a heavy mechanical metal door, as if meant to isolate something. But this place had existed for who knew how many years. Some of the iron doors were open, some had decayed, and others appeared to have been breached by some monster that had escaped. This really is a laboratory. They reached the main hall, and Li Xinyue observed the surroundings. On both sides of the vast hall were several enormous jars filled with green liquid and various tubes. The connected metal equipment below was long damaged, the jars empty. Some jars were shattered, glass shards scattered on the floor. What is this place? Probably some kind of biological laboratory, and Ling guessed. Li Xinyue was puzzled. But what does it have to do with the ruins? I don't know. They wandered around, finding nothing of use. Aside from the abandoned equipment, there was only thick dust. Could this be a coincidence? Is it actually unrelated to the ruins mentioned in the event? Doubtful, they decided to search every corner. If they couldn't find any useful information here, it would mean this place had nothing to do with the so-called ruins. The laboratory wasn't particularly large, but not small either. There were numerous rooms and cabinets. A thorough search would take at least half an hour. Ling and Li Xinyue split up, checking everything they could. The cabinets were empty, devoid of any documents. Evidently, whoever evacuated long ago had destroyed everything. Soon, Ling discovered a box emitting a faint blue light in one room. She immediately called for Li Xinyue. I have a feeling this might be the source. Her voice was serious over the communicator. Li Xinyue arrived shortly. What do we do? Open it? Of course. She opened it decisively. Instantly, the room was filled with the blue light. Then, something resembling a manual slowly floated out. Just as Ling grasped it, a rumble shook the entire laboratory. The blue light is disappearing. Seawater is pouring in. Get out of there. Suyu's anxious voice came through the communicator. Ling and Li Xinyue immediately looked towards the exit. Without hesitation, they prepared to escape, unable to examine the item in hand. Cracks appeared on the ceiling. Without the energy, the laboratory couldn't withstand the immense water pressure. The dilapidated structure was about to collapse. Go up? Ling grabbed Li Xinyue. They couldn't escape through the entrance now. She put on her mask, and cold air surged beneath her feet. A giant ice sphere materialized, encasing them, reinforced with the surrounding soil. Here it comes, she warned. A loud crash followed as the ceiling above shattered and collapsed. A massive ice pillar shot upwards, piercing through the falling debris. In the next second, Ling teleported through the hole she created. Reaching the top of the ruins, Li Xinyue transformed into water, merging with the sea, then reappeared beside Ling. Floating in the ocean, Ling immediately used her ring to examine the item. Blueprint of the ruins. Fragment. Description. Collect all fragments to summon the legendary underwater ruins. The description was simple. Ling opened the blueprint, finding information on the other 4 fragments. Some locations were near, others far, but all were within channel 666. What the heck? After all this, it's just a key. Li Xinyue grumbled. How much oxygen do we have left? Ling asked the others. We can last another 3 hours at most before we need to resurface for supplies, Chenrue reported. In that case, let's return. This dive wasn't completely fruitless. At least we know the ruins are real. As Ling spoke, they regrouped and started ascending towards the surface. She melted the ice layer, and the submarine floated up. The hatch opened, and everyone breathed a sigh of relief. The pitch-black deep sea was incredibly oppressive. Where are we? Suyu asked Qin Shao, who had carried the locator. Qin Shao stepped onto the ice, retrieved the locator from his spatial backpack, and checked it. His expression was surprised. We're at the edge of the 4th sea region. We drifted that far? Chapter 197. Leaderboard and the World-Shaking Reward. 3 nights later. The group was beneath the surface of the 1st sea region. And Ling held a blueprint emitting a faint blue light, the 5th key fragment to the underwater ruins. Now, all 5 blueprint keys were assembled. At this time, they were the most developed group in the entire channel, possessing the resources to explore the seabed. As for the other survivors, simply surviving this event was a stroke of luck. 5 city ruins, each guarded by a different colossal monster, like bosses protecting treasure. Their strength progressively increased, from the first one at peak elephant level to the final one at peak chariot level. And Ling had managed to kill the last monster by luring it to the surface. This event was clearly designed for team cooperation, yet she soloed it with her exceptional strength. Of course, some other Awakened might possess similar capabilities. Wearing diving suits and gathered on the seabed, and Ling took out all 5 fragments. The moment they appeared together, the surrounding faint blue energy began to attract each other, gradually merging. The key fragments underwent an incredible transformation. Their shapes shifted from blueprints, melting like liquid, then slowly coalescing into a strange crystal radiating an intense light. In the next second, a beam of light shot towards the sky. The group quickly distanced themselves. The dazzling blue light reached the surface, effortlessly melting the thick ice and snow, then soared into the heavens. At this moment, every survivor in the entire channel, huddled in their islands, witnessed this beam. The dark sky was illuminated by the blue light, even the clouds above dispersing upon contact. The entire channel erupted in a frenzy, survivors peering through windows at this supernatural spectacle. What is that? Not another disaster, is it? That blue beam. I feel like it could pierce the sky. Is it coming from an island or the seabed? Is it related to the underwater ruins in this event? That's actually possible. The big shot who took down the Ark's chariot level could explore the seabed. It makes sense, since it's an underwater ruin. So, does that mean this damned weather is finally ending? Sigh, too late. We're landing on the new island in a few days. Before the survivors could process the news, the system interface displayed a world-shaking announcement. Dear survivors, we understand that recent developments may have left you utterly bored. We have a special announcement, adding a touch of excitement to this dull world. Channel leaderboard unveiled. Description. This leaderboard is based on absolute strength, ranked fairly and justly. The top-ranked survivor will receive a special reward. Note 1. The top rank will be publicly displayed in real time across the entire channel. Anyone who kills the top-ranked survivor can usurp their position. Note 2. Due to the special event, the island landing time has been extended to 10 days. Channels can no longer merge, and survivors cannot join other islands. To compensate for the absolute difference in strength, from this moment on, all life forms will drop experience points upon death. Survivors, have fun. Reward, qualify for the final trial. Victory grants return to reality. Boom. The announcement was like a thunderclap in everyone's minds. In this world, what could be more exciting than returning to reality and a life of ease? At this moment, every survivor was driven to frenzy. Those who survived until now weren't fools. They immediately took out their locators. Whether basic or advanced, every green screen, apart from the green, representing themselves, now displayed a flashing red dot. Undoubtedly, that was the top-ranked survivor in the channel. They looked out their windows, trying to see across the vast ocean, and noticed the blizzard had lessened considerably. It seemed the trigger for the leaderboard was likely the mysterious underwater ruins, and the discovery of the ruins seemed to signal the end of the Ice Age. Meanwhile, the group on the seabed was equally stunned by the announcement, now completely uninterested in the ruins beneath them. Unlike others, Ling's interface displayed additional information. You are ranked first in this channel. Your location will be displayed in real time to the entire channel. Survive for 10 days to qualify for the final island. You and your group are considered a single entity and will all receive the event reward, limited to survivors who joined before this event. So, if I win this, I can leave and take my teammates with me? And Ling's eyes widened. The others gathered around, looking at the message on her interface. These few simple words excited everyone present. That's fantastic. Now that channels can't merge, I don't believe anyone in the entire channel can beat Ling. Real-time location? That's just free experience for others. The next island landing was postponed, and the old event replaced by a new one. At this moment, not just the group, but the entire channel, even all the survivors worldwide, were in a frenzy. With channel merging and team formation disabled, the channel was effectively locked down. These survivors had no other choice but to target the top rank. Of course, it was unknown how many people they would kill to boost their strength before that. Ling only knew that the final, brutal selection had begun. It seems our decision to fortify the island was correct, Suyu said. The others agreed. Only Qin Xiao remained silent, seemingly deep in thought. After a moment, he spoke, "Don't get too excited. Even if Ling secures first place, it's only a qualification for the final trial, not a guaranteed win. I believe in Ling," Li Xinyue said immediately. "I'm not trying to discourage everyone. This isn't about belief. What if?" Chapter 198. Channel-wide manhunt begins. Qin Zhao's words silenced the group, leaving them momentarily speechless. He was right. Even securing the top spot only granted qualification, not guaranteed success. The higher their hopes, the greater the potential disappointment. Moreover, failure often meant death. Losing Ling, their backbone, would be equally devastating. Only Ling noticed Qin Xiao had more to say. After letting the group collect themselves, he continued. "While we don't know what dangers await on the final island, strength remains paramount." "No kidding. You think this is the real world where money talks?" Li Xinyue rolled her eyes. Ignoring her, Qin Xiao continued, "What I mean is, we're bound to face attacks from numerous survivors in the coming days, and killing them grants experience points." "You mean let Ling kill them all, boosting her strength as much as possible before landing on the next island?" Suyu was the first to grasp his meaning. "Exactly. The stronger Ling is, the greater our chances of leaving, right?" he said calmly. "Also, this is a channel ranking. Do you think the top survivors from other channels will also participate? That makes the competition fierce." Li Xinyue suddenly felt less confident. Other channels were bound to have ruthless killers. What if they accumulated enough experience? What if the final island, like the leaderboard, allowed only the top survivor to leave? No one could say for sure. "Let's do as you say." "And Ling, any objections?" Li Xinyue turned to her. "None. I don't want to die, and we all want to leave this place." And Ling nodded in agreement. After calming their emotions, they turned their attention to the underwater ruins below. The glowing key had already sunk into the sand and vanished. Then, with a tremor, the true appearance of the ruins emerged. The blue beam of light hadn't disappeared. Instead, as the key fully merged with the ruins, the beam grew thicker. The light dispelled the darkness of the deep sea, and the thick beam reaching the surface melted a large area of ice and snow. "The energy radiating from this is terrifying. We can't approach it," Ling said gravely. The entire ruin was enveloped by this energy. Floating at the periphery, they could only exchange glances. "Let's return and see if the energy dissipates in a few days," Qin Xiao suggested. They couldn't just wait here indefinitely. Everyone agreed and began boarding the submarine for their return. Reaching the surface, they discovered the ice around the energy field was melting rapidly, and the blizzard had stopped. The clouds began to thin, promising clear skies soon. The temperature was visibly rising, no longer as cold as before they entered the sea. Although still around -30°C, it was much better than the previous -50 or 60. Moreover, as ability users, their physical constitutions were exceptional. They were currently in the first sea region, still a considerable distance from the sixth, needing to cross the entire fifth sea region. Unwilling to waste time, Ling flew ahead, breaking the ice, while the others followed in the submarine, heading towards the sixth sea region. However, Ling's location was shared across the entire channel. As they passed through the fifth and sixth sea regions, countless survivors gathered, intending to seize this opportunity. Among them were organized groups, smaller than the Ark, but still numbering in the dozens. Since everyone on an island would gain the right to leave if their leader secured the top spot, even if the leader was reluctant, their followers wouldn't agree. The extreme weather made sailing impossible, yet these groups, driven by desperation, were approaching on foot, seemingly having lost all reason. Furthermore, the submarine wasn't fast on the surface. The reason they weren't traveling underwater was, of course, the lack of oxygen. They now shared a single locator, upgraded to max level, with a search radius of 100 kilometers, capable of simultaneously identifying survivors, ships, construction islands, and resource islands. Extremely useful. Looking at the locator screen and then at Ling flying ahead, Qin Xiao said, 32 survivors, or possibly ships, are approaching from 100 kilometers ahead. More are coming from the southwest and northeast. They're coming this fast? Li Xinyue wasn't worried, but rather excited. The Ark's rise to become the largest organization in Channel 666 was inseparable from their leader's strength, and that leader had fallen to Ling's sword. Undoubtedly, Ling was now the strongest in their minds. An attack? More like free experience. No rush. Let's keep moving. I'll deal with them all at once when they get closer. Ling's voice came calmly from the sky. She felt no pity or guilt. They were coming to kill her. Should she show mercy? What? They just wanted to go home. Please, who didn't? The still frozen landscape was Ling's domain. With her abilities and the extremely lucky blessing, she doubted anyone could defeat her now. She felt terrifyingly powerful. Soon, a large group of survivors appeared in their sight. Heavily armed and wrapped in thick animal furs, they were slowly approaching on foot. Upon seeing the white-haired figure ahead, confirming the identity of the top-ranked survivor, they actually sat down to rest. This amused Ling. They even had the leisure to recover their strength. And how did they know she would continue forward? She didn't care to know. It wasn't necessary. At this distance, with her current strength, reaching them was a matter of a minute or two. With teleportation, even faster. I'll go take care of those guys ahead. Chapter 199. Return to base. Ling spoke to the others below, then accelerated her flying sword and shot forward. The survivors resting on the ice were still unaware of the approaching danger. Seeing her charge towards them, excited smiles spread across their faces. This wasn't due to stupidity or arrogance. Everyone present was elephant level, over 30 of them. Even a chariot-level powerhouse had limits. 30-plus elephant-level survivors, each with their own ability, should be able to overwhelm her. I didn't expect the top-ranked survivor to be a white-haired beauty. I love white hair. Hee hee. It's fine. We can enjoy her while she's still warm after she's dead. Everyone, get up. Prepare for battle. The path home is right before us. Following their leader's roar, everyone stood up, ready to face the enemy, their faces brimming with uncontainable excitement. But before Ling even arrived, sword lights rained down like a furious storm. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Defend, defend, someone shouted, and 2 or 3 survivors stepped forward, activating their abilities. Without exception, they all possessed strong defensive capabilities. The group quickly formed a defensive formation, sheltering behind their protectors. But the expected clash of abilities didn't occur. The sword energies passed them by, striking the thick ice beneath. Suddenly, a sword flew forward, its sharp blade piercing the ice and stopping before the 3 defenders. Their leader peeked out, assessing the situation. Seeing the chilling air emanating from the sword, he realized the danger. Not good. Scatter. But it was too late. Crack. The ice beneath them shattered, plunging them into the sea. Before they could react, the water instantly froze. Everyone, along with the seawater, became ice sculptures. In a single instant, Ling had dealt with these overconfident individuals. She glanced at the ice, then turned and left. No one would notice the new ice sculptures on the vast expanse of ice. Within 5 minutes, they would die from frostbite and suffocation. Returning to reality was a pipe dream for them. Perhaps death was their best destination. Ling then eliminated the enemies from the other 2 directions. By the time they left the first sea region, no other survivors had time to catch up. As they entered the 5th sea region, heading back to their island, survivors in the channel chat were secretly conspiring. Is it possible the top-ranked survivor is the one who killed the Ark's leader? I've asked around, and no one has claimed to have killed Zhang Qingshan. In that case, the one who killed Zhang Qingshan is likely the top-ranked survivor. I've learned their island is in the 6th sea region. A chariot-level powerhouse? That's terrifying. I advise against going there in separate groups to feed her experience. So what? Don't you want to leave this hellhole? Since we know their island is in the 6th sea region, why not attack together? These conspirators intended to use a Zerg rush tactic. Whether quantity could overcome quality remained to be seen. Other survivors scoffed at their plan, refusing to join. They adhered to the principle of survival of the fittest. Cannon fodder would always be cannon fodder. Better to spend the time hunting other survivors, increasing their own strength, for that was the only way to claim the top spot. Situations like Channel 666, where the top rank overwhelmingly surpassed others, weren't uncommon. The initial rankings often solidified into the final rankings. Only now did the survivors realize how hard others had worked while they slacked off, waiting for death. However, some channels had weaker top-rank survivors, facing channel-wide pursuit from day one. In some cases, the top spot had changed hands countless times. Those channels were in complete chaos. Time passed, reaching late night. And Ling had eliminated countless survivors in the 5th Sea region and finally crossed the border into the 6th. Meanwhile, countless eyes watched her movements in secret. They mistakenly believed she was fleeing in desperation, bolstering their confidence. Standing on her flying sword, and Ling surveyed the endless darkness ahead, breaking the ice while checking the time on her pendant. Finally, midnight arrived. She decisively turned the pendant. Congratulations. Blessing complete. Bonus permanently converted to passive skill. Blessing points, 2. You will remain fortunate in all uncertain situations. Indeed, and Ling's blessing for the past few days had been extremely lucky. After countless uses, it was finally complete. Luck always on her side. This was the protagonist's halo. She understood the difference between always active and randomly triggered. Only 4 blessings remained, 3 of which were now useless to her. The only useful one left was double happiness. And Ling turned the pendant again. As expected, 2 small figures appeared, representing double happiness. With extremely lucky active, how could it go wrong? Luck was a part of strength. In high spirits, she led the group back towards their island. They should arrive before dawn. Perhaps her display of power during the day had deterred them. Or maybe nighttime wasn't ideal for action. Or perhaps it was simply the first day, and the survivors hadn't had enough time to gather. Whatever the reason, they encountered no further attacks on their way back. Phew! Suyu breathed a sigh of relief as she stood on the island. We're finally back. Chen Rue parked the submarine and walked towards Ling. Do you still need me to reinforce the defenses? No. Let them come. Chapter 200. Choosing the battlefield. Several days passed quickly. The 5 lived peacefully on their island. Strangely, no one came to bother them during this time. After the ruins' glow faded, and Ling returned to the 1st Sea region to search, but the entire underwater city, along with the sky-piercing blue beam, had vanished without a trace. And Ling returned, disappointed. It seemed the underwater ruins event was simply about diving and collecting the 5 key fragments. With the beam gone, sunlight pierced through the clouds. The ocean world saw clear skies once again. The temperature shift was dramatic. Daytime temperatures quickly soared to summer-like levels, reaching over 30 degrees Celsius. The meter-thick ice and snow melted completely within 2 days. The sea returned to its azure hue, waves gently swaying in the breeze. Nothing now hindered the survivors' determination to sail. And Ling didn't mind them not coming. Secure in her top rank, she only needed to wait for the event's end. The other survivors should be the anxious ones. The group hadn't been idle these past few days, continuing to explore resource islands for supplies and skill cards. With extremely lucky, now a passive skill, and Ling could draw from the point shop's blind boxes anytime, anywhere, the worst reward being an item card. This significantly accelerated their island's development. Currently, Ling was on a resource island, holding a skill card, which she immediately used. Beyond advanced swordsmanship was master level, which was her current level. Master level swordsmanship had no further subdivisions. She had a feeling her skill was about to reach its maximum level. Ding! A notification popped up. It was a message from Qin Xiao. News from the Arkansas. A large number of survivors are heading towards the 6th Sea region. No big deal, and Ling replied nonchalantly, not concerned. Even if hundreds came, they were just cannon fodder. It said there are many, over 1,000. Seeing Qin Xiao's next message, and Ling was stunned. 1,000? A few hundred would be manageable, but 1,000 was a war. She couldn't return to the island and wait. Even if they won, the island would suffer heavy losses. She didn't want her hard-built villa destroyed. Realizing the gravity of the situation, she quickly devised a plan. Keep an eye on them for me. I won't be returning for now. You mean you'll fight them at sea? Qin Xiao immediately understood. Not just that. I'm highly mobile. They can't touch me at sea. Returning to the island would be more troublesome, and Ling replied. I understand. Be careful, Qin Xiao cautioned. Asking him to monitor the situation, she went to the resource island's shore and sat down. It was dusk. The enemy fleet hadn't yet entered the 6th Sea region. They wouldn't arrive until tomorrow morning at the earliest, and Ling would wait for them here. After resting for about half an hour, the resource island was about to sink. She quickly built a simple raft, covering it with straw and leaves. This would be her bed for the night. As the sun set, the sky darkened. Rumble. The island behind her trembled, slowly sinking beneath the waves until it vanished completely. Witnessing this, and Ling lay down on the raft, drifting with the current. She didn't know where she would wake up tomorrow, but it didn't matter. When the first rays of sunlight touched the azure sea, the eastern horizon was painted gold, and Ling woke up groggily and opened her system interface. There was a new message from Qin Xiao. They've entered the 6th Sea region. She didn't reply, instead standing up and turning her pendant. Congratulations. Blessing complete. Bonus permanently converted to passive skill. Blessing points, 3. All drops and rewards from kills, destruction, etc. will be doubled. Good. 1 blessing complete. What's next? And Ling turned the pendant again, excited for her new blessing. A target icon appeared. As expected, of the remaining 3 blessings, this was the only one that still offered combat benefits. It had been a while since she'd received this one. Blessing received. Bullseye. All fishing, throwing, and ranged attacks will hit their target. Time remaining. 19:01:59. Closing the interface, and Ling placed the locator on the raft and inserted a positioning card. The green on the screen flickered, and a new resource island was located. Glancing at the coordinates, she summoned her flying sword, gathered her things, and soared into the air, heading towards the newly located island. After she left, the small raft on the sea suddenly burst into flames, quickly turning to ash and merging with the ocean. The complex terrain of the resource island, perfect for scattering the survivors, would be the ideal battlefield. If they refused to land and waited until nightfall, they would still be at a disadvantage. And Ling, with her abilities, could still fight at night, and she could fly. What did they have? They had nothing. They hadn't even bothered to understand her strength or abilities before rashly gathering to attack. They were practically courting death.